Sometimes the most cherished aspirations can morph into the most harrowing terrors. This is Albert's narrative, a cautionary account that will fundamentally alter your perception of romantic connection. Please share in the comments section where you're viewing this from. The aircraft's wheels met the runway in Manila at precisely 47 minutes past 11 in the evening. Albert disembarked into the thick, warm night air, his roughened hands clutching a solitary black travel case. At 59 years of age, he believed he had experienced everything life had to offer. 25 years serving as a construction foreman in Michigan. A profoundly acrimonious dissolution of marriage that cost him half of his retirement savings. Offspring who rarely initiated contact anymore. Yet, as he stood there in the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, enveloped by unfamiliar tongues and a sea of unknown faces, Albert experienced a sensation he hadn't felt in decades. Optimism. "This is it," he murmured to himself. "A brand new beginning." The taxi driver's command of English was rudimentary, but his smile conveyed a genuine warmth. As they traversed the vibrant, illuminated thoroughfares of Manila, Albert pressed his face against the window. Street vendors peddling grilled delicacies at the stroke of midnight, families precariously balanced three abreast on motorbikes, children engaged in play within narrow laneways, despite the advanced hour. Everything here felt infused with vitality. Back in Detroit, his apartment echoed with silence, punctuated only by the refrigerator's drone and the distant murmur of traffic. Here, life throbbed through every artery of the city. Albert had conducted extensive preparatory research. 3 months spent conversing with Filipino women online, exchanging endearing messages, engaging in video calls, and receiving assurances of discovering genuine affection. However, one woman distinguished herself from the rest. Her appellation was Maya, a 27-year-old nursing student hailing from Quezon City, possessing large brown eyes that radiated a captivating sparkle even through the confines of his laptop screen. Unlike the others, she never inquired about financial matters. Instead, she probed into his aspirations, his preferred culinary delights, and the things that brought him mirth. "I am eagerly anticipating our meeting," she had typed just prior to his boarding the flight. "I possess a favourable premonition regarding our connection." Albert smiled, recalling those very words as the taxi navigated its way to his hotel in Makati. Tomorrow, he would finally encounter Maya in person. Tomorrow, his authentic life would commence. Yet, had Albert possessed foreknowledge of the events that awaited him in the ensuing months, he might have reconsidered and opted for the immediate return flight home. The shopping mall hummed with the energy of the afternoon. Albert occupied a seat in the food court, repeatedly checking his timepiece, his palms perspiring despite the climate control. Then he saw her. She navigated the throng with an air of self-assurance, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders, adorned in a simple azure dress that lent her the appearance of having stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Upon spotting Albert, her countenance illuminated with a smile that caused his heart to momentarily falter. "Albert!" she exclaimed, practically sprinting towards him. She embraced him in a hug that evoked a profound sense of homecoming. She exuded the fragrance of jasmine and vanilla. For a fleeting moment, Albert momentarily forgot his age, the silver in his hair and his expanding waistline. "You are even more handsome in person," Maya remarked, stepping back to admire him. "The camera truly doesn't capture your full appeal." Albert flushed like a schoolboy. "You are the truly radiant one here. I still can't quite comprehend that you expressed interest in meeting me." They conversed for hours. Maya recounted her upbringing in a modest province amidst 6 siblings, the premature passing of her father when she was merely 12, leaving her mother to raise them single-handedly. She spoke of working 3 concurrent jobs to finance her nursing education. "My aspiration is to assist individuals," she stated, her eyes shimmering with earnestness. "However, life is arduous here, expenses are exorbitant, and remuneration is exceedingly meagre." Albert found himself reciprocating, sharing anecdotes of his solitary evenings in Michigan, expressing his observations about how American women his age often appeared embittered, solely preoccupied with his financial capacity. He articulated his weariness of feeling unacknowledged. "You are not invisible to me," Maya affirmed, reaching across the table to gently touch his hand. "I perceive you, Albert, the genuine you." That evening, she guided him through the vibrant cityscape of Manila. They journeyed via jeepney through the bustling avenues, and she introduced him to her preferred eatery, a barbecue stall, laughing heartily as he grappled with the fiery condiment. They posed for numerous selfies at Rizal Park, her demeanour suggesting immense pride in being seen with him, as if he were a celebrated figure. "My companions will find it unbelievable that I am dating a handsome American," she giggled, scrolling through the captured images on her mobile device. Albert experienced a sensation absent for years, a feeling of being desired, needed, and vibrantly alive. Over the subsequent 2 weeks, they were virtually inseparable. Maya would collect him from his hotel each morning, brimming with enthusiasm and meticulously planned activities for the day. They explored Intramuros, embarked on boat excursions across Manila Bay, and wandered through the labyrinthine lanes of Chinatown. But it was the quiet interludes that resonated most deeply with Albert. The way she would lean against him while they observed the sunset, the comforting clasp of her hand as they strolled, as if fearful of his imminent disappearance. "I have never experienced emotions like these before," she confessed one evening as they sat on the hotel balcony. "Is it utterly outlandish that I am already contemplating a future together?" Albert's heart pounded erratically. "No," he responded, "it is not at all outlandish." And in that profound moment, gazing into Maya's eyes amidst the twinkling urban panorama of Manila spread out below, Albert made a decision that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of his existence. However, certain choices, irrespective of their perceived correctness at the time, precipitate unforeseen repercussions. 3 months later, Albert found himself residing in a leased condominium unit in Quezon City. The dwelling, though modest, was their shared sanctuary. Maya had virtually relocated her entire life there, bringing her clothing, her academic texts, and her aspirations of becoming a registered nurse. Life felt akin to a waking dream. They would greet each morning together, sharing breakfast on their compact balcony, overlooking the bustling street below. Maya would then depart for her classes while Albert explored the city or engaged in video calls with his companions back home, proudly boasting about his captivating girlfriend. "You fortunate fellow," his friend Dave would exclaim. "She is stunning and genuinely appears to care for you." That was the essence of Maya's appeal. She did indeed seem to care. She would send him text messages throughout the day, inquiring, "Have you eaten? Please remember your medication. I already miss you." She would offer soothing massages to his shoulders whenever he complained of back discomfort. She listened intently to his narratives concerning construction projects as if they were the most fascinating accounts she had ever encountered. Yet gradually, Albert began to perceive subtle anomalies. Maya's phone was invariably placed face down whenever they were together. She would excuse herself to attend to telephone calls, conversing rapidly in Tagalog, before returning with explanations that felt meticulously rehearsed. "It is merely my sister," she would profess. "Family matters, you understand." Her nursing school schedule exhibited a disconcerting unpredictability. On certain days, her classes spanned from morning until late evening. On other occasions, she possessed unexplained periods of free time lasting for several hours. "The professors are perpetually altering the schedules," she explained when Albert inquired about the discrepancies. "It is exceptionally disorganized here." Then there were the discussions surrounding finances. Initially, they were minor and casual, pertaining to tuition expenses, familial emergencies, and unforeseen expenditures. "My mother is unwell," Maya disclosed one evening, her eyes welling with tears. "She requires medication, but it is prohibitively expensive. I am at a loss as to what to do." Albert's heart ached at witnessing her distress. "How much?" he inquired. "No, I could never ask you for money," Maya protested. However, she proceeded to mention the exact sum. While not a substantial amount by American standards, Albert recognised its immense significance to her. He provided the funds without a moment's hesitation. Her gratitude was overwhelming, manifesting in tears, affectionate kisses, and fervent promises to repay him the instant she graduated and secured employment. However, the requests became increasingly frequent, more urgent, and undeniably more costly. A classmate was getting married, necessitating a suitable dress for Maya for the occasion. Her laptop malfunctioned and she required it for her academic pursuits. Her nephew was hospitalised. Albert found himself acquiescing to each request. This was not due to any inherent naivete. He was far from unintelligent. It stemmed from the unbearable pain associated with contemplating the alternative. If Maya was exploiting him for financial gain, then what did that signify for their relationship? What did that define him as? Consequently, he consciously dismissed his burgeoning doubts, manufactured justifications, and rationalised that in a country grappling with economic challenges, financial exigencies were an intrinsic aspect of everyday existence. Yet, in the quietude of the late night, while Maya slept beside him, Albert would lie awake, gazing at the ceiling, and ponder the authenticity of their shared reality. How much of Maya's affection was genuinely felt, and how much was merely an exceptionally convincing performance? The revelation, however, was approaching far sooner than he anticipated. 6 months spent in the Philippines had wrought a significant transformation in Albert. He had shed weight, acquired a smattering of Tagalog phrases, and felt a surge of vitality surpassing anything he had experienced in years. Maya was the catalyst for all these improvements. She had introduced him to her family circle, including her mother, her siblings, and her numerous aunts and uncles. They embraced him as if he had always been an integral part of their extended kinship. He participated in family gatherings where everyone vied to serve him the most delectable food. Children would clamber onto his lap, affectionately calling him Tito Albert. For the first time in his adult life, Albert felt a genuine sense of belonging. "You bring Maya so much happiness," her mother conveyed to him one Sunday following their meal. "I can discern it in her eyes. She cherishes you deeply." That evening, as they strolled along Roxas Boulevard, admiring couples capturing selfies against the backdrop of the Manila Bay sunset, Maya gently broached the subject of their future. "Albert," she said softly, "do you ever contemplate marriage?" His heart momentarily ceased its rhythm. "Every single day," he admitted, "meaning for me." "Do you consider marrying me?" Albert halted his perambulation. He turned to face her, taking her hands within his. "Maya, I contemplate it ceaselessly. I envision constructing a life alongside you, raising a family, and growing old together." Tears began to stream down her cheeks. "Really? Is it truly so?" "I love you, Maya," he declared, "more profoundly than I have ever loved another individual." She sealed his declaration with a kiss right there on the bustling pavement, unconcerned by the surrounding onlookers. "I love you too, Albert, immensely." 2 weeks thereafter, Albert found himself on bended knee in the centre of Luneta Park. Maya emitted a gasp of astonishment upon glimpsing the ring. It was unostentatious, yet it gleamed brilliantly in the afternoon sunlight. "Maya Santos," Albert began, his voice betraying a tremor, "will you consent to marry me?" "Yes," she exclaimed, her voice resonating with such volume that it seemed to encompass half the park. "Yes, yes, yes!" The surrounding spectators erupted in applause. Strangers eagerly captured photographs. Maya, a mixture of tears and laughter, proudly displayed her ring to anyone who would acknowledge it. They exchanged vows precisely 3 months later. A modest ceremony was held in a beautiful church situated in Quezon City. Maya appeared ethereal, clad in a simple white gown. Albert, adorned in a barren Tagalog, felt a profound sense of belonging in his new country. Maya's kin nearly filled the church pews, while Albert's contingent was sparse, comprising just 2 acquaintances met at a Makati bar. Yet none of this detracted from the profound moment. What truly resonated was the woman by his side, vowing unwavering love through all of life's trials. "I'm the luckiest man alive," Albert murmured as their first dance commenced. "And I'm the luckiest woman," Maya echoed. However, Albert would soon discover that fortune in Manila could shift as rapidly as the tropical weather, and sometimes the very person professing eternal devotion might be orchestrating your downfall. Their marriage brought about a seismic shift, albeit not in the ways Albert had anticipated. Maya relinquished her nursing studies the month following their wedding. "I don't need to work anymore," she declared with a radiant smile. "I have you to provide for me." Albert felt a pang of uncertainty, but refrained from appearing overbearing. If Maya wished to dedicate herself to their life as husband and wife, he saw no reason to object. Then a business proposition arose. Albert, my dear, Maya began one morning at breakfast, I have an idea. What if we launched our own venture? Her plan was meticulously detailed. A modest eatery in Quezon City, offering authentic Filipino cuisine to both locals and expatriates. She had already identified the ideal location, consulted with vendors, and even conceptualized a straightforward menu. I could manage it during the day while you rest, she enthused. It would provide us with a stable income and I'd feel productive again. What's your take? Albert was delighted to see her so animated. What would our start-up capital be? Maya produced a notebook filled with meticulous calculations, rent, equipment, initial inventory, permits, and staff wages. The total sum made Albert's eyes widen, yet it wasn't insurmountable. He possessed his pension, some accumulated savings, and the proceeds from selling his Michigan residence. That's a substantial amount, he stated cautiously. I understand, but Albert, this could secure our future, our autonomy. We wouldn't have to fret about finances any longer. She displayed photographs of the prospective site on her phone, a small storefront situated on a bustling thoroughfare. Excellent foot traffic, a reasonable rental rate. It appeared genuinely promising. All right, Albert conceded finally. Let's proceed. Maya's shriek of delight was so potent it could have roused the entire neighbourhood. She embraced him tightly, showering his face with kisses. You won't regret this. I give you my word. We are destined for great success. The ensuing weeks were a blur of administrative tasks and financial transactions. Due to prohibitions on foreign ownership of businesses in the Philippines, all registrations had to be under Maya's name. Albert dutifully signed document after document, entrusting his wife with the finer details. It's merely a formality, Maya reassured him. You remain the true proprietor. I'm simply the name on the paperwork. Albert transferred $45,000 from his American bank account to their joint account in Manila. This represented the bulk of his remaining savings, but Maya's vision of their future resonated deeply. The restaurant, christened Maya's Kitchen, opened 6 weeks later, its bright red signage a beacon, the aroma of adobo wafting into the street. Maya enlisted her cousin for culinary assistance and a friend's daughter to attend to patrons. During the initial days, Albert made frequent visits to observe operations. Maya was invariably occupied, exuding cheerfulness and brimming with anecdotes about the clientele. Business is improving, she'd inform him. Word is getting out. Give it a few more weeks and we'll be realising significant earnings. However, after the first month, Maya began to discourage his visits. Darling, there's no need for you to come by so frequently, she'd say. You're retired. You should be relaxing, not worrying about the restaurant. I have everything completely under control. Albert valued her autonomy. She was his wife, his business associate. If she asserted that all was well, he accepted her word. Yet on occasion, late at night, when Maya believed him asleep, Albert would overhear her hushed conversations in Tagalog, punctuated by nervous laughter. When questioned about the late-night calls, Maya would offer a reassuring smile, attributing them to supplier issues, nothing for you to concern yourself with. Albert yearned to believe her, needing to believe her, for if Maya was fabricating truths about their business, he dreaded to think what else she might be concealing. Albert awoke at 3 o'clock in the morning to find Maya's side of the bed cold, devoid of her presence, as if she had departed hours earlier. This was the third instance that week. Maya, he called out, but the condominium remained silent. He discovered a note on the kitchen counter. Emergency at the restaurant. Back soon. Love you. Albert prepared coffee and settled on the balcony, observing the deserted streets below. A few jeepneys rumbled past, but the majority of Manila slumbered. He pondered what sort of restaurant emergency could necessitate a 3 o'clock departure. When Maya finally returned with the dawn, her alibi was readily available. The freezer malfunctioned, she explained. I had to salvage all the food before it spoiled. I contacted some suppliers to take it off our hands. Thank goodness we didn't suffer total losses. She appeared fatigued, yet her makeup was immaculate, her attire pristine, and she exuded the fragrance of expensive perfume, not the typical restaurant ambiance. Perhaps I should assist next time, Albert offered. No need, Maya interjected quickly. I managed it. You should rest. Later that afternoon, while Maya was purportedly at the restaurant, Albert decided to surprise her with lunch. He walked the 6 blocks to Maya's kitchen, carrying a bag of her preferred suman from the local market. The restaurant was closed. More than just closed, it appeared abandoned. The windows were dark, chairs were piled atop tables, and a thick layer of dust coated everything. A for rent sign was affixed to the door, displayed in both English and Tagalog. Albert's heart began to pound. He tried the door, but it was locked. Peering through the windows, he saw only empty shelves and a scattering of old flyers on the floor. "Excuse me," he called out to a woman selling vegetables from a nearby cart. "How long has this establishment been shuttered?" She regarded him with a sympathetic gaze. 2 months, sir. Perhaps longer. The young woman who rented it stopped coming. She simply vanished one day. Albert felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. 2 months. Maya had been deceiving him for 2 months, fabricating daily excursions to work. He stumbled home in a daze. When Maya returned that evening, brimming with tales of a busy lunch service and a new patron who had raved about her pancit, Albert simply stared at her. "How was your day, darling?" she inquired, bestowing a kiss upon his cheek. "Fine," he managed. "And the restaurant?" "Wonderful. We're truly cultivating a loyal customer base. I believe we'll soon see substantial profits." Albert nodded and offered a smile, though inwardly he was screaming. That night, after Maya had fallen asleep, Albert did something he had never imagined doing. He went through her phone. It didn't take long to discover what he sought. Messages exchanged with an individual named Ryan. Hundreds of them. Intimate exchanges. Photographs that turned Albert's stomach. Arrangements for clandestine meetings at hotels. Discussions about their shared future. References to eliminating the old man. The most recent message, sent earlier that day, read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Hotel room is ready." Albert read it 3 times before its full impact registered. While he was uncovering the restaurant's closure, Maya was arranging another rendezvous with her boyfriend. He scrolled back through weeks of messages and a disturbing timeline emerged. Maya had been involved with Ryan since before their wedding, possibly even before Albert's arrival in the Philippines. The restaurant had never genuinely commenced operations. Maya had absconded with his $45,000, presumably to give to Ryan, spend on lavish hotel stays and shopping sprees, or squirrel away for their joint future. Albert placed the phone down, his hands trembling. He gazed at Maya, sleeping peacefully beside him, and for the first time since setting foot in the Philippines, he saw her with absolute clarity. Not as the devoted wife he believed he had married, nor as the struggling nursing student requiring his support, but as a stranger. A beautiful, perilous stranger who had masterfully manipulated him from the outset. The critical question now was, what would his course of action be? Albert remained awake for the subsequent 3 days. He would lie there, watching Maya sleep, contemplating the sincerity of her smiles, the truth behind her declarations of love, and the number of nights she had returned from Ryan's embrace to bid him good night. He engaged the services of a private investigator, a Filipino-American former police officer named Carlos, who specialised in such intricate cases. "You'd be surprised at how common this is," Carlos remarked during their initial meeting. "Foreign gentlemen seek love here, and certain local women perceive dollar signs. Not all of them, of course, but enough to create a significant issue." Carlos operated with remarkable efficiency. Within a week, he had compiled photographic evidence, hotel receipts, financial records, and phone logs. The accumulated proof was both overwhelming and devastating. Maya and Ryan had been romantically involved for over a year preceding Albert's arrival in Manila. They resided together in a condominium in Marti, likely financed by Albert's funds. Ryan was unemployed, subsisting on whatever Maya could extract from Albert. "She's been corresponding with 3 additional foreign suitors online," Carlos reported. "It appears you are merely the first to materialise." The most agonising aspect was the photographs. Maya and Ryan holding hands on the very streets where she had walked with Albert, sharing kisses on the same beach where she had professed her love to Albert. indulging in shopping excursions with funds Albert had allocated for emergencies. Albert stared at the evidence meticulously arranged across his kitchen table. His entire relationship with Maya had been an elaborate performance. Every moment of shared happiness, every promise of everlasting commitment, all of it had been carefully orchestrated to divest him of his wealth. When Maya returned home that evening, humming a cheerful tune as was her custom, Albert was waiting for her, clutching the incriminating photographs. "Sit down," he instructed her quietly. Maya's face drained of colour as she surveyed the pictures. For a fleeting instant, Albert perceived genuine emotion in her features. "Fear, Albert. I can explain. Please don't." His voice carried a calm he didn't truly feel. "Stop deceiving me. I'm aware of Ryan. I know about that non-existent restaurant. I'm informed about the other gentlemen you communicate with online." Maya's carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. The persona of the doting, affectionate wife vanished, supplanted by an individual Albert had never encountered before. Someone exhibiting coldness and strategic calculation. "So what?" she challenged, folding her arms. "What are you going to do about it?" The question struck Albert with the force of a physical blow. What indeed could he do? He was 59 years old, situated thousands of miles from his homeland, in a nation whose legal framework he barely grasped. Maya was his legal spouse. All their shared financial holdings were registered under her name. "I want a divorce," he declared. Maya responded with an audible laugh, a genuine, unforced laugh. "There's no provision for divorce in the Philippines, Albert. Didn't you conduct your due diligence before relocating?" The sole recourse available is an annulment, a process that extends over many years. Years involving legal counsel, meticulously scheduled court appearances, and expenditure of funds you no longer possess. Albert felt the net tightening around him. The funds for the restaurant. "What restaurant funds?" Maya inquired innocently. "You gifted me that money, Albert. A loving husband supporting his wife's aspirations. Best of luck proving otherwise." She rose, her stature suddenly appearing considerably greater than her 5'4" frame. "Here's how this will unfold, Albert. You will remain silent regarding Ryan. You will continue to provide me with financial support as required, and perhaps, if you conduct yourself admirably, I will permit you to maintain our marital status." Her smile, at this juncture, was chillingly devoid of warmth. "And if I decide otherwise," she continued, "I will lodge formal complaints with the barangay. Allegations of domestic violence, emotional abuse, marital rape. Immigration will find that compelling. How long do you anticipate it will take them to deport you? Would you prefer to spend your remaining days in the Philippines incarcerated?" Albert realised his entire body was trembling, not from apprehension, but from an overwhelming surge of pure, unadulterated rage at his own foolishness, at how easily he had been manipulated. "You are malevolent," he whispered. "I am practical," Maya countered. "You arrived here seeking a youthful, attractive companion who would cater to your needs indefinitely. I provided you with precisely what you desired. The fact that it lacked authenticity does not negate the agreed-upon price." She retrieved her handbag and moved towards the exit. "I'm going out. I don't know when I'll return. Arrange your own evening meal." The door slammed shut behind her, leaving Albert to confront the devastation of his aspirations. The ensuing week was a blur of despair and fury for Albert. He lost his appetite, his sleep, his mental clarity. Everywhere he looked within the condominium, their shared residence, he was confronted with stark reminders of the extent to which Maya had deceived him. The wedding photographs adorning the walls, the "I love my husband" mug Maya had ironically gifted him, the very bed where she had murmured promises she never intended to honour. Maya came and went according to her own will. At times she would be absent for several days. Upon her return she would act as if nothing had transpired. "Good morning, dear," she'd greet him cheerfully, preparing coffee as if she were still the devoted wife. "Did you rest well?" This psychological torment proved far more debilitating than any financial losses. Albert began to question his own sanity. His companions back in Michigan observed a marked deterioration in his appearance during their video calls. "You look dreadful, Al," his friend Dave remarked. "What's occurring over there?" Albert found himself incapable of articulating the truth. The shame was too profound. How could he confess that his beautiful younger wife harboured no affection for him? That all his boasts were fabrications? "Just tired," he would respond. "The heat is getting to you." However, Maya's campaign against him was far from over. One evening, she presented him with a new demand. "Albert, I require $20,000. He looked up from his modest meal of instant noodles, a stark contrast to Maya's cessation of cooking for him. "For what purpose?" "My cousin intends to launch a business venture. Import-export operations, highly lucrative. I informed him you would be making an investment." Albert nearly scoffed. "Do you truly believe I am that gullible?" Maya's expression hardened. "I believe you will provide me with the funds unless you wish me to make certain telephone calls." She produced her mobile device, revealing a contact entry labelled Immigration Officer Maria Santos. "An amusing facet of domestic violence accusations," Maya stated casually, "is that they require minimal corroboration, merely a fearful spouse presenting bruises and a narrative of abuse at the hands of her foreign husband." Albert's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't dare." For a moment, their gazes locked across the confines of the small kitchen. Albert envisioned his future unfolding before him. Years of relentless blackmail, a gradual draining of his remaining financial resources and personal dignity until nothing was left, unless he took a decisive action. "Very well," he stated softly. "I will procure the funds for you." Maya's smile was one of unadulterated triumph. "A wise decision. I will need it by Friday." However, Albert had no intention of relinquishing another cent to Maya. That very night, after she departed for another evening out with friends, he contacted Carlos, a private investigator. "I require your assistance," Albert requested. "Not in gathering evidence this time. I need to disappear." Carlos remained silent for a considerable duration. "Are you certain about this? Once you depart, there is no returning." Albert surveyed the condominium one final time, taking in the wedding photographs, the hollow promises, and the self-imposed prison Maya had constructed around him. "I am certain," he affirmed. "Facilitate my departure." The plan was straightforward. Albert would withdraw the remaining funds from their joint account, approximating $15,000. Carlos would transport him to the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning, prior to Maya's return from her nocturnal excursions. By the time she realised he was gone, Albert would be traversing the Pacific Ocean. It was not a matter of justice. Maya would retain the funds designated for the restaurant, the wedding gifts, and all other assets she had pilfered from him. Yet survival at times takes precedence over the pursuit of justice. As Albert meticulously packed his single suitcase, the very same one he had arrived with 8 months prior, he found himself contemplating the Albert who had disembarked from that aircraft brimming with optimism and aspirations. That earlier version of himself had been naive, perhaps even foolish, but he had also possessed the courage to embrace the possibility of love, even at the advanced age of 59. This current Albert, preparing his belongings at 2 o'clock in the morning to abscond from his own wife, was arguably wiser. However, he was also profoundly wounded in ways that might never fully mend. He left Maya a note on the kitchen counter, positioned near the coffee maker where she would discover it in the morning. "Maya, the charade is concluded. Refrain from attempting to locate me. Cease all contact. I am cognizant of your true nature, and you are now aware of mine. An individual who refuses to be your victim any longer. May you find happiness with Ryan. You are well suited for each other." Albert exited the condominium at 3:30 in the morning, carrying only his suitcase and the painful realization that affection at times is insufficient. Often, the person in whom you place the greatest trust is the very one who orchestrates your downfall. Yet, as he entered Carlos's vehicle and observed Manila receding in the rearview mirror, Albert experienced a sensation he had not felt in months. Liberation. The flight from Manila to Detroit felt akin to traversing through time. 13 hours airborne to nullify 8 months of cherished dreams and catastrophic misjudgments. Albert gazed out the airplane window as the Philippines vanished beneath the cloud cover. Somewhere down there, Maya was likely awakening to his note, perhaps already contacting Ryan in a state of agitation, possibly formulating her subsequent strategy. It no longer held any significance. Albert had concluded his role as her plaything. The passenger seated beside him was a young Filipino-American gentleman, approximately 25 years of age, possessing kind eyes and a Michigan State University sweatshirt. "Are you all right, sir?" the young man inquired during the meal service. "You appear as though you've undergone a trying experience." Albert almost chuckled. "One might say that, returning home." "Yes, finally," the young man responded, nodding with an expression that suggested a deeper understanding. "The Philippines can present complexities for Americans, particularly in matters of relationships." Albert regarded him more attentively. "You sound as though you possess some insight into that." "My uncle encountered a comparable situation. A different woman, an identical narrative. It cost him his entire fortune." "What became of him?" "He extricated himself, much like you are doing. Commenced anew at 62 years of age. It was arduous, but he is happier now. He married a lovely woman from his congregation, someone of his own age who genuinely cherishes him." This conversation instilled a sense of hope in Albert. Perhaps he was not the sole individual to have been ensnared by such a deceitful scheme. Perhaps a future existed beyond Maya. As the aircraft touched down in Detroit, Albert felt as though he were awakening from a feverish dream. The crisp air, the familiar inflections, the orderly cues at customs. Everything possessed a tangible reality that Manila had consistently lacked. His friend Dave collected him from the airport, posing no inquiries when Albert appeared with the same suitcase he had departed with, and a countenance that appeared a decade older. "You are welcome to stay with me for as long as you require," Dave offered as they navigated Albert's familiar neighbourhood. "Sarah has prepared the guest room." Albert's own apartment had been sublet during his absence, but the tenant was scheduled to vacate at the end of the month. It would be an unusual experience to reside in his former dwelling once more, but at least it was unequivocally his. No joint ownership, no legal entanglements, no Maya. The initial weeks proved challenging. Albert would awaken at 3 o'clock in the morning, disoriented about his whereabouts. He would instinctively reach for his phone to check for messages from Maya, only to recall that he had blocked her number and deactivated his Philippine bank accounts. The shame proved the most formidable obstacle. His family sensed that something had gone amiss. One does not plan to retire to paradise only to return by 8 months later without a cogent explanation. However, Albert found himself unable to divulge the complete truth. Not yet. He attributed the situation to cultural disparities, a longing for American cuisine and climate, and the realisation that expatriate retirement was not suited to him. Only Dave was privy to the genuine account, and that was after Albert, under the influence of alcohol one evening, confessed everything. "Good heavens, Al," Dave exclaimed upon hearing the details concerning Maya, Ryan, and the fabricated restaurant. "I am truly sorry, my friend. I suspected something was amiss when you ceased engaging in video calls." "I feel so utterly foolish," Albert confessed. 59 years of age, and I was taken in like a mere adolescent." "You were taken in by what you believed was love. That is not foolishness. That is inherently human." Dave's assessment was accurate, yet it did little to alleviate the burden of his shame. Albert commenced consultations with a therapist, Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a woman in her 50s who specialised in assisting individuals in overcoming emotional distress, informed Albert during their third meeting that his experience had a name. She explained that it was a romance scam and its prevalence was greater than most people realised. While his legal marital status added a layer of complexity, she assured him that the psychological impact remained consistent. Albert inquired about the path to recovery and how he could ever trust again. Dr. Martinez responded that time and forgiveness were key. Albert expressed his inability to forgive Maya for her actions. Dr. Martinez clarified that she was not referring to forgiving Maya, but rather forgiving oneself. This sentiment resonated deeply with Albert, hitting him harder than he anticipated. He recognised that he had been burdened by more than just anger and shame. Guilt was also a significant weight. He felt guilty for his desperate yearning for affection that had caused him to overlook obvious warning signs and for being perceived as old, lonely, and easily exploitable. Dr. Martinez reassured him that his vulnerability did not signify weakness, but rather his humanity. Furthermore, she pointed out that his capacity to disengage once he recognised the situation highlighted a strength far exceeding his own perception. Gradually, and with considerable effort, Albert began to mend. He secured a part-time return to his former construction job. The physical labour provided a welcome contrast to the months spent idle in Manila. His colleagues welcomed him back with light-hearted remarks about his ill-fated vacation, but they did not pry for details. Albert resumed attending church, not due to a newfound faith, but out of a need for a supportive community, people who remembered him before Maya and saw him as more than a victim. 6 months after his return from the Philippines, Albert received a Facebook message from an unfamiliar account. The profile picture was a generic sunset, but the message sent a chill down his spine. It read, "Albert, this is Maya. I know you're reading this. I'm pregnant with your child. Send money for the baby or I'll tell everyone in your hometown what kind." Albert stared at the message, the implication of the scam becoming chillingly clear. $500 monthly, or her fabricated story would be disseminated. The former Albert, consumed by his desire for Maya's affection, might have reacted with panic, perhaps sending the money simply to end the ordeal. However, this Albert, having extricated himself from her web and begun rebuilding his life, possessed a clearer perspective. He took a screenshot of the message, forwarded it to Carlos in Manila, who confirmed Maya's non-pregnancy and her ongoing attempts at similar deception with 2 other men. Then, Albert performed an action that brought him more solace than anything he had experienced in months. He blocked Maya's account and deleted the message. He realised that some spectres only held power if one allowed them to. 2 years later, Albert resided in a modest suburban home in Detroit. While not opulent, it was unequivocally his. He had cautiously resumed dating, forming a connection with Carol, a widow from his church. She was his age and understood the complexities of starting over later in life. Carol was aware of Maya's deception. Albert had learned to recount his ordeal without shame, and she admired his resilience. One evening, as they shared a quiet moment on his porch watching the sunset, Carol told him, "You're braver than you know. A lot of men would never recover from something like that." Albert squeezed her hand. He acknowledged that he had come close to not recovering, but he had, for the most part. The recurring nightmares ceased. The shame softened into a dull ache, and the anger transformed into a more constructive emotion, wisdom. Albert began volunteering with a support group for victims of romance scams. Once a month, he would sit in a circle with others who had been deceived by fabricated affection. Men and women, young and old, were united by the shared experience of having their emotions exploited. Albert would initiate the sessions by advising new members that the situation was not their fault, emphasising that their exploiters were professionals adept at studying vulnerable individuals like scientists studying diseases, knowing precisely what to say and how to make someone feel special. A woman named Patricia, who had lost $80,000 to a man she met online, raised her hand, questioning how she could have been so foolish given the obvious warning signs. Albert nodded, recalling his own repeated self-recrimination. He explained that it was because they wanted to believe in love and that desire was not foolish but fundamentally human. He cautioned that the true tragedy would be allowing these experiences to extinguish that capacity for love permanently. Albert's narrative began to extend beyond the support group. A local news station featured a segment on romance scams, and Albert agreed to an interview. His face was obscured and his voice altered, but his message remained potent. Love should not entail financial ruin, and genuine affection does not come with a price tag. The television interview gained significant traction, and Albert received hundreds of messages from individuals sharing their own harrowing experiences. Men who had lost their life savings to women in foreign countries, and women who had been victimised by fabricated personas of soldiers, doctors and businessmen, all came forward. The sheer scale of the problem was staggering, with billions of dollars lost annually to romance scams and thousands of lives shattered by false promises and empty affections. Albert decided to document his journey in a book titled Fool's Paradise: How I Lost Everything to Fake Love and Found Myself Again. While not a runaway bestseller, it reached those who most needed to read it. One review in particular deeply moved him. "This book saved my life. I was on the verge of sending my retirement fund to a woman in Colombia whom I believed loved me. After reading Albert's story, I hired a private investigator instead. It turned out she was married with 3 children. Thank you for your courage in sharing your shame so others don't have to live it." Albert kept a copy of that review on his desk as a constant reminder that his pain had served a valuable purpose. 3 years after escaping Manila, Albert received an unexpected email from Carlos, the private investigator who had assisted him. Carlos informed him that Maya had been arrested the previous week for immigration fraud, facing multiple charges. It transpired that she had been running scams against 6 different foreign nationals concurrently. Both she and Ryan were facing significant prison sentences due to their greed and subsequent carelessness. Albert read the email twice, anticipating a sense of satisfaction, justice, or vindication. Instead, he felt a profound sadness. Sadness for Maya, who had squandered her intellect and beauty on causing harm. Sadness for the numerous men she had deceived. Sadness for the underlying societal issues of poverty and desperation that gave rise to predators like her. Most significantly, however, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for his escape, for his survival, and for the self-love he had cultivated, empowering him to leave someone who did not deserve his affection. Albert closed his laptop and went to the kitchen where Carol was preparing dinner. She looked up as he entered, her face radiating genuine warmth. "How was your day?" she asked. The question was identical to one Maya used to pose, but when Carol asked it, Albert knew she genuinely desired to hear the response. "Good," Albert replied, kissing her cheek. "Really good." That night, lying beside Carol and listening to her steady breathing, Albert reflected on the man he had been when he disembarked in Manila 4 years prior. That version of himself had been searching for love in all the wrong places, for all the wrong reasons. He had mistakenly believed that love was contingent upon being needed, on being the hero in someone else's narrative, or on proving his worth despite his age and isolation. However, real love, as Albert had come to understand, was far simpler. It was Carol's genuine inquiry about his day. It was sharing morning coffee without keeping track of who paid for groceries. It was being accepted unconditionally, not for what he could provide. Albert had finally discovered genuine love, but only after learning to cherish himself enough to demand it. If you are viewing this video, you may be contemplating finding love abroad. Perhaps you are weary of dating within your own country, believing a younger partner from a different culture will alleviate your loneliness. I comprehend that sentiment. I have experienced it myself. However, before you book that plane ticket, before you wire funds, before you commit to marriage after only 3 months of knowing someone, allow me to offer some hard-earned advice. Firstly, take your time. Genuine love does not operate on a strict deadline. If someone is pressuring you for immediate commitment, demanding money promptly, or urging significant life changes after only a few weeks, it is not love. It is manipulation. Secondly, safeguard your assets. Never, under any circumstances, place property or major investments in another person's name, regardless of how much you trust them. Love does not necessitate making yourself financially vulnerable. Thirdly, familiarise yourself with the relevant laws. If you are relocating to another country, it is imperative to understand its legal system, including marriage and divorce laws, as well as property rights. Ignorance in these matters is not bliss, it is perilous. Fourthly, trust your instincts. If something feels amiss, it most likely is. Do not disregard red flags simply because you desire a fairy tale outcome. Fifthly, have a contingency plan. Maintain sufficient funds in your own name within your own country to facilitate your return should circumstances deteriorate. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And finally, remember your inherent worth. You do not need to purchase love, nor do you need to rescue someone to be deserving of affection. True love embraces you for who you are, not for what you can offer. I nearly lost everything chasing a dream that was never real. However, in doing so, I gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that I deserve better and that we all do. Do not allow desperation to render you an easy target. Do not let loneliness impair your judgment, and never permit anyone to convince you that love requires the sacrifice of your dignity, your security, or your self-respect. Love is intended to enhance your life, not to dismantle it. If my story can prevent even one person from repeating my mistakes, then perhaps it was all worthwhile. Take care of yourselves and remember that true love is worth waiting for.